Let's now turn to other stories. The Ondo State government has raised the alarm of unrestricted importation of foreign palm oil into Nigerian market, saying the development would cause further harm to the palm oil sector and the economy. The Senior Special Assistant to Governor Rotimi Akeredolu on Agribusiness, Akin Olotu, condemned the importation of palm oil to the country and described it as a pure economic sabotage. Mr. Olotu, who appealed to President Bola Tinubu and governors to halt further importation of palm oil to the country, noted that the cartel behind the exportation should be checked to stop the economic sabotage from escalating.
The astronomical increase in the importation of palm oil into the country in the last 4 months, it is purely economic sabotage. And I'm appealing to Mr. Governor, Mr. President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to beam his searchlight on this development. It's a gap between local production and the demand in the country. But the gap cannot be what has been imported into the country. What has been brought into the country is purely outrageous, and I see it as economic sabotage.
Now, to talk more on this is the Senior Special Assistant to Ondo State Governor on Agribusiness, Akin Olotu. He joins me now virtually. Good to have you join us.
Yeah, good evening. I'm happy to be here. Good evening, Nigerians.
You have said that this is an economic sabotage, but some people will say, look, because we need about 3 million metric tons of palm oil in the country, and right now we can only produce about 1.03 million metric tons, that we need to make up for what we don't have by importation. How then do we do that without importing?
Well, I acknowledge the gap between local production and what the local demand. I acknowledge the fact that there is need to bridge that gap. But my grounds is this: how can we continue to import when local producers are not selling? We have tanks across the country filled up with palm oil. So if we have exhausted what we have locally, then there is no problem going into and bringing in the shortfall. So my point is that because I know that gap between the demand and the supply is not what has been brought in. What has been brought in is far beyond that. So that is why I'm calling Mr. President to look at this. And apart from that, in the last 4 years or thereabout, in Ondo State in particular, tremendous investment has gone into oil palm value chain in the country, in the state. I am sure within the last 4 or 5 years, nothing short of about 50 billion naira worth of investment has taken place in the sector. So then another thing that Mr. President must look at is this data. Yours sincerely, we have been brandishing this same data for the past 10 years. So it is speculative. I raised this issue in a program we have with Central Bank about 3-4 years ago. The CBN governor was here. I said, how are we sure about this data that we are brandishing? How did we come about this data? Which we have been recycling the same quantity as the deficit for the past 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So my position is this: the gap should be bridged through local production. No importation should be permitted without when people producing locally are not able to sell.
And from what I can get from what you're saying, it also seems as if we're not just trying to bridge the gap, but that we're we're importing excess into the country. But let me ask you, because one would have thought that, whilst previous governments have said we were diversifying the economy and we were focusing on agriculture, that some of these things have been taken care of, that, investments have been made in some of this, in agriculture and maybe rice production, palm oil production, cocoa production. What exactly is going on?
Well, that's a very good question. In Ondo State in particular, in the past 3-4 years, we've put, Central Bank can confirm this, and a lot of other reputable organizations, that in Ondo State, 1,000 hectares of oil palm. The National Economic Council monitoring team, they were in the state some few months back. They visited some of the project sites. So we are coming up. And I know what we are doing is not just the large scale. We are promoting the large, medium, and the small holders. And we are using the best of varieties you can think of in the country. So I'm appealing to the president that in his drive to create jobs for people, he has Ondo State model to copy and replicate across the country. So that the gap, the genuine gap, is a good problem. What I'm saying is a good problem is that it is an opportunity for us to create jobs for thousands of our people. One of the investors in the state was telling me sometimes ago that, look, that maybe he might have to move to other states to get labor, to get people that work on the farm. So that is very critical. Mr. President must encourage the investors in actual cultivation and processing in the country. And this will be done. Absolutely, it is a must.
And that enabling environment, like you have been saying, that enabling environment must be created for local farmers in the country if we want to bridge that gap.
It is a long-term. It is a long-term investment.
Absolutely, so I do have to leave it there.
The credit window.
My apologies. We do have to leave it there. Thank you so much for bringing all of these issues to light. Senior Special Assistant to Ondo State Governor on Agribusiness, Mr. Akin Olotu.
Thank you.